Hello traders, and welcome back to day 10 of your boot camp. Now today we're going to start to get into some of the tools so that we can start to utilize these swings and the sequences that you guys have been learning about so that you can learn how to measure. Once you know how to measure properly, then you can of course start to measure your entry points, your stop loss levels, and your target points, and it's going to help you to really start to mold and really put this method together. And so what I want to talk about today is how to use the fib or the Fibonacci extension tool. Remember, as we talked about in the beginning, there's two different types of extension or Fibonacci tools that we will be focusing on. Number one is the Fibonacci retracement, in which a market works one way and retraces back before continuing, in which you are measuring this retracement. And number two is, of course, the extension, in which you are measuring the length of the swings. So before we head over to MetaTrader 4 and before we talk about it, what I want to do is teach you guys a little bit about what is it actually measuring. And so it's very simple. All it's doing is it's measuring the length of swings. And so it's no different than just measuring how long of a distance something is. And so, and of course, in the case of Forex, we're using pips. And so what we'll do is we will be utilizing the origin point, point 1, point 2, and point 3. But we only need to utilize these three in general, origin 1 and 2, to figure out the extension points. And so all the extension does is it says this distance from origin to 1, right here, let's say this distance is 100 pips. Okay. It's going to take this distance of this swing, and it's going to then spit out a level where point 2 starts, and say it works up 100 pips to here. Okay, that is equal length. This swing is 100, this swing is 100, in the middle is a pullback. All right, so what it's going to do is it's going to spit out what's called an FE, or of course a Fibonacci extension 100 level, and there's different levels that it will give to us. And so today we're going to talk about how to use the tool, because once you know how to use the tool, you'll know how to enter. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us over to MetaTrader 4, and we're going to learn the basics of the tool, and then we'll teach you exactly what to measure after that. So here we are at MetaTrader 4, and in yesterday's video and in day 9 and day 8 we have been talking about this chart here. So I like to keep everything as cohesive as possible so we're on the same chart. And so we've already yesterday learned how to identify our origin point after a trend direction change, followed by our point 1 and 2. And today we're going to learn how to use the Fibonacci extension to then identify where our point 3 will potentially sit. And it will make us basically a zone, and that zone is what's called a PRZ, a potential reversal zone. And those are the areas that we'll be trading in. So the first thing I want to do over on MetaTrader 4 is take a look at this toolbar. If you look up here, what you're looking for is this icon. It's an upside down check mark with an F and a bunch of dots towards the top. All right, if you don't have that, just right click and go to customize and find it over here under the available section. Once you find it, click on it and click insert, and you'll see it right here, Fibonacci expansion. Fibonacci expansion tool does not need to be hard. Keep in mind the most difficult part of the sequence is actually finding and labeling origin 1 and 2. So the hard work has already been done. The hard work's already been done. It's now time for you to use the extension to then start to really find our entry zones. So the first thing you want to do is you want to click on this button here, your Fibonacci expansion. What you'll notice right now as you see this cursor moving, notice it's just the regular pointer that you guys see on your computers every day. When I click the expansion, you'll notice that my cursor is now a different icon. It's you know, these little lines and a little slash and things like that. All right, with a crosshair. This is what you want. This is now telling me that my tool is toggled and ready to be used. And it is now time to measure. And so this is a click and drag system. This is not just a click and it'll magically do it for you. You have to actually line it up. And so the first thing I want to do is zoom in a little bit so I can really get a good accurate reading. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the origin point, and I'm going to left click and drag. Okay, so you see that now I'm dragging and numbers are spitting everywhere. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to drag all the way down to my point 1. Okay, and I'm going to let go. So now my origin point is ready because I clicked on it. I drug it down. My point 1 is ready. Only thing that's left is adjustment, as you can see, to point 2. You'll see this little red line here. This tool, this red line is basically solidified right now. The only time it's not solidified is if it has little white dots. So what you want to do is double click. And what you'll notice when you double click is these little white dots will show up. And then what you want to do is click the little lonely white dot up here and bring that to point 2. Okay, once you've brought it to point 2, you will notice that right here we have a FE100. Right here we have an FE61.8. Right here we have an FE123.6. And right here we have an FE161.8. Okay? So it's now measured this. To make this point clear, once again, all it's doing from the 100 level is it's showing us that the distance from origin to 1 is equal to the distance from 2 to this 100 level. So if I were to take just a trend line tool and I were to click it and drag it down here, you can see that in inches, let's say in inches, you know, this is a certain amount of inches here, just this line on the screen. If I then double click this and move this trend line, if I can without adjusting the Fibonacci level, there we go, and I move this trend line over here to point 2, look at where the dot lies, right at the 100 level. All it's doing is saying this swing and then the pullback is equal to this swing. Once again, this swing is equal to this swing. Origin to 1 is equal to 2 to 3. We're trying to find market symmetry. We're finding a symmetrical solution to the market. When the market gives us a chance of being symmetrical, it gives us better odds. And this is where we will start to find our PRZ. So point 3, you might be asking, where's point 3? Point 3 is anywhere in this zone, starting from the 100 level all the way down to the 161.8. The market's best chance of reversing, make this a little bigger. The market's best chance of reversing is anywhere starting here at this 100 all the way down. The good news about that is that's a big zone for us to use structure and confluence and pay attention to previous levels. Now I haven't gotten into how we'll enter off of these just yet, but you're starting to now get hints. We will be using this zone for entry. Now this is an origin to 1 to 2. So what I want to now do is go back to the presentation and show you how do I measure, what do I measure. You measure everything the same way with the tool. But what if it's a 5 swing? What if it's a 9? What if it's an 11? I'm going to show you that now. So as we've talked about, we have 3, 5, 7, or 11 swings, right? But what we now want to do after we just learned how to measure a 3 swing is learn how to measure one of these swings, a 5, 7, or 11 swing. And a 5, 7, 11, as I say at the top here, is much more difficult than a simple 3. And so this slide here is going to be good for you guys because you need to keep it handy so that when you see one of these opportunities in the market, you know exactly how you should measure it. All right. So these swings are obviously defined as higher lows or lower highs, whatever, depends on the trend of the market. And you're still going to use the Fibonacci extension tool for these. And so typically 5, 7, or 11 swings occur because of truncation. Big word. Big word. Okay, this is just a really fancy word, and I hate using fancy words because, you know, I'm not trying to hit you with crazy words that you won't remember, but this is a word you need to write down, truncation. Reason you need to write it down is it's a word that I talk about all the time. I don't know how else to describe it. And this word here is vital to your success because if you understand what the word means, it's going to give you a better chance of success in the live room. So write down that word truncation. Now, let me describe to you what truncation means. We just talked about in a 3-swing market, we have origin to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3. And all we're doing in that market is we're measuring this to this. The distance from origin to 1 is equal to the distance of 2 to 3. Say this is 100 pips, then of course this is 100 pips. What a truncated market means is very similar, but we have origin to 1, say this is 100 pips. We have 1 to 2, and then we have 2 to 3, but this is only, say, 75 pips, and then the market comes down again. Okay? That's what's called a truncated market. It never reached its Fibonacci extension level of 100. When you run into these situations where point 3 is working its way up, where you've measured it and then it reverses out, when you run into these situations, you're dealing with a truncated market, or you're dealing with truncation. Okay, that's all that means. Once again, all it means is that basically this swing here is greater than this swing here, and the market decides to reverse before hitting the 100 Fibonacci extension level. Now, when it happens, it's not the end of the world, because what it means is we're likely heading in, unless point 2 is broken. Keep in mind, this will be 1, this will be 2, this will be potential for 3. If point 2 gets broken, truncation is not the case. Or a 5 swing is not the case, I should say. It still can be truncated. But if you have a situation where you have 100 pips here, market pulls back and continues to make higher highs, okay, this is a 5 swing market. And so how we measure it, as you know, in a 3 swing market, what do? You bring your Fibonacci extension level from your origin to point 1 to 2, and it equals to point 3. You measure from these 3 levels. We just talked about that. We just did that, and go review that if you need to. For a 5 swing, it's not really that much different. All you're going to do is you're going to measure from your origin. Here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, here's 4, here's 5. Okay? All you're going to do is you're going to measure from your origin point to 3 to 4. Okay? And your Fibonacci tool will be used. On a 7, this is the difficult one that we'll talk about on the 7. Okay? What we need to know on a 7, and why you needed to know truncation, was when we work on a 7 swing market, if it's truncated at the beginning, meaning it's truncated easily at the beginning 3 or 5, that's when you're going to have to use it from origin to 3 to 4. If truncated. If truncated. If it's not truncated, you use 5 to 6. And I have a visual example in a minute. Okay, but write this down, make sure you know that. And then finally on 11, it's just from origin to 5 to 6. Okay, so what this looks like, again, is very simple. If we have a 3 swing market, as you know in the tool, you click and drag, and you're basically putting your little dot on your origin, on your 1, and on your 2, okay, in your tool. And this is the red dotted line that we talked about. Okay, on a 5 swing, all it is the dot here, and dot here. On a 7, it can be this way, or depending on the truncation side of things, it can be this way. Okay, once again, if this is truncated, you're going to rock the 5 to 6 on the 7 swing. If this is truncated. If this is met, then that's when it's a 3 to 4. If it's met. Okay, once again. All right, and then on the 11th, very simple, it's just origin 5 to 6. Now you have to know this information. This is more advanced information because this is going to help you. But we'll talk about something called internal versus external sequences, in which we can utilize this as just origin 1, 2, 3. Makes it much simpler. Okay, we'll talk about what that is, internal versus external, in the next, or in the coming videos. I'm not sure which video it is. Okay, but understanding how to measure these are vital. So if we switch this to the other side of ways, or the bearish side, once again, origin on the 3 swing to 1 to 2 when you're measuring that. On here, on the 5 swing, 3 to 4. On the 7th, of course, still depends. It's going to be one of these levels. And on the 11, pretty easy, 5 to 6. All right. Now, when we're talking about these levels right now, we're talking about getting used to finding these. All right. And so there's different reasons that you'd measure these. You're going to be measuring them for your stops, for your entry, and for your target. And you're going to measure different sides of the market dependent on what you're actually looking for. And so as we move forward here to entering and things of that nature, you have to remember that there's going to be different measurements you're going to have to make for every trade. Every trade does not only have one Fibonacci extension measurement. In fact, every trade almost is guaranteed to have at least 2 Fibonacci extension measurements. One of your Fibonacci measurements will always be for your target, and one will always be for your entry and your stop loss. Okay? So you're going to have to get used to utilizing both of these. And I think the biggest issue that traders have is that they get too intricate with this. They wonder, you know, which is it? What swing are we at? And so with this lesson, in this case, obviously the only thing I'm teaching you guys to do right now is utilize the tool. So it's not necessarily, you know, a long video. But with this video comes time and patience. You're going to, if you need to, you know, do better, you're going to have to know how to utilize this tool. So what I want you guys to focus on, you know, after today's boot camp is work on practicing and finding these sequences, okay, and go out there and use the tool and just measure, practice measuring, regardless of if it's as crisp as you would like, or, you know, regardless of if you're just copying what I have through the live room and you're just practicing. It doesn't matter. Practice using the tool, because if you can't use the tool, you won't be able to work out the next few days of information on entering and stopping and all of that. Once again, these days right now, these bootcamp parts are extremely pinpointed. So today we've only covered Fibonacci extension. This is what you need to know. This is how you need to do it, okay? So once again, I'll see you guys back here in day 11, in which we will actually talk about how to enter the market. So we're really starting to get into things now. Make sure if you don't understand this, watch this video 10 times if you have to, and I'll see you guys back here for day 11.